Welcome to This Is My Architecture. I'm Matt from AWS. Today I'm joined by Yoni, who's the Chief Enterprise Architect for Public Cloud at Vanguard. Thanks for joining.
Hey Matt, thanks for having me.
So Vanguard is a financial services company. I have a lot of mutual funds with Vanguard. I'm a customer. But you're also doing a lot of innovation in the cloud, is that right?
That is correct.
So your group, tell us about what you unlock, what you enable at Vanguard.
Yeah, our group is a cloud construction team under the Office of CTO. And in this particular architecture, we have deployed a lab architecture and allowing any crew member to experiment with any kind of open source software as well as AWS services without any constraint or thought to security. So we kind of taken that upfront and basically created a safe experimentation sandbox for them to work.
A safe place. Yeah, a lot of enterprises that I work with struggle to reconcile kind of enterprise-grade security with really allowing their employees to innovate in the cloud on AWS. So this is effectively what you've done here, right?
That is correct.
Okay, well let's walk through your architecture. I see that you have AppStream over here. I usually associate AppStream with, well, application streaming, but you're using this more in a security context. So tell us how it works. How does it begin?
Sure. So we have two distinguished accounts here, separate accounts for full IAM separation. And AppStream runs in a VPC on this MGR account, if you will. It's running in a VPC, and it's a jump box that allows the users from the enterprise to connect to the lab account itself without having any networking connectivity from the on-prem network.
Well, that's interesting because we use the concept of bastion hosts a lot in more sort of classical system administration, and you're effectively using AppStream almost like a bastion host for AWS access. Is that right?
That is correct. And the beauty of AppStream is that it's in browser, so we don't need any special client. The browser is already there, and we created a very custom image for the users in the lab. Working for the Linux user as well as the Windows users. So we have an X application running on it, as well as the RDP client, SSH and everything.
So I'm a Vanguard engineer or architect. I open up my laptop. I access the AppStream endpoint. How does it know who I am, whether I should have access? How do you have those sort of front-end security and access controls?
Sure. So we have a couple of AD groups, which every user that wants to work in the lab needs to have presence in. One of them for the access to the AppStream, and our internally written federation system creates a AppStream login URL for each user individually.
Okay.
Once they land in the AppStream, we have actually two connections that are happening between those accounts, the VPC peering and the VPN connection that goes all the way here into the layer 7 firewall capable of VPN and BGP routing, and that's how they get to the intranet.
So you said at the beginning you're using Active Directory groups to control whether or not they can have access. How does IAM know about those Active Directory groups?
Sure. So the users that are in the lab actually, like you said, have an IAM accounts, IAM user accounts. We have a Lambda function that sits in a different account, and through the networking connectivity, it reaches out to an LDAP service on-prem and queries a specific AD group for user presence. If a user is present in this account, it will create a user in IAM in the lab account in a special group, and it will send an email to the user with disabled password. So they need to change their password the first time they log in.
So that you're actually doing sort of Lambda-driven account synchronization.
That is correct.
That's very cool. And then you said you have a layer 7 firewall here. I assume that's running on EC2.
It is.
Okay, great. So is that to provide sort of the additional network security layers? What role does that play?
Sure. It controls the access for the users in the lab. It has a categoric filtering, so they're allowed to go to internet at wide, but we control certain unsavory websites, if you will, that they cannot go to.
Sure. And
also it controls the AppStream, allowing AppStream only to access AWS services and nothing else. So you can't actually connect to the open internet from here, just AWS services.
So like the management console, for example?
Correct.
Okay, so you gate it to the management console or whatever you need to actually access AWS and the services you need to spin up. Okay, so you have what I imagine is IP whitelisting or some kind of network controls, is that right?
It's a category-based controls, and the layer 7 firewall, actually, we can do it by URL.
Okay.
So certain URLs with wildcards can be allowed to go out, and we restrict everything else. So there are two policies, one for the AppStream itself, and one for the lab, everything else in the lab.
Okay, great. So you mentioned account level separation. You have the access controls sort of synchronized via Lambda with IAM between Active Directory. You have the network controls, so you access what they can and cannot see. So that's great. You have multiple layers of security. What does this actually let them do?
So as you can see by the multitude of AWS icons in this account, in the innovation account, they can launch any service from AWS. They can launch EC2, bring open source software, compile it, install it, run it. They have access to the marketplace, AMI, so any kind of marketplace that doesn't require special licensing. They can launch and experiment with. They can do RDS, machine learning, big data, anything that AWS has to offer. They can experiment with those services.
So this is a true kind of secure, isolated sandbox for your users.
That is correct.
That's interesting.
The only controls that we apply there is that users cannot circumvent the networking controls. So there is a route table and there is a NACL. They cannot change those. They cannot create new ones, but they can create subnets. They can attach those controls to their existing subnets. They can create security groups. We don't even care what the rules of those securities groups are.
And are you managing that with fine-grained access controls, with policies, with IAM?
Yes, that is correct. And another thing that we manage is that users can't just log into this account directly. The layer 7 firewall here has an EIP, and the policy that every user inherits in this account has a condition for the source IP that every request either needs to come from the CIDR of the VPC of that account or from the EIP of the layer 7 firewall.
That's great. So, I mean, you don't have to go through sort of traditional procurement. You can spin up what you need whenever you need it to sort of experiment. But one thing I found with some customers who had sandboxes is that they get really popular and then cleaning up becomes a task. How do you handle that? You know, once they're done with their experiment and walk away, I'm just guessing sometimes people forget to shut stuff off. How do you manage that?
That's a very good point. And yes, we do have it happen quite a lot. But we take care of that as well. So we actually, for the sake of security and saving money, as well as clearing clutter, as you said, we have a Lambda function that runs every hour, but at 7 p.m. local time of that user, it will shut down the EC2 instance. It will still leaves it behind. So if the user wants to come the next day and continue experimentation, all the data is persisted, and then they can continue working.
Oh, that's great. So it's not just wiped out. And we've been talking about EC2, but I see some other. I see Amazon Machine Learning and Athena. So I imagine you don't restrict it just to EC2. Users can experiment with a lot of services. Is that right?
Pretty much every service that is out there available by AWS that we have listed in a whitelist of the policy, they can experiment with.
That's great. And so you automate a lot of it so it's not as sort of heavy and self-service. It's fast and efficient for users. You give them that freedom, but at the same time you apply constraints and security at multiple layers to make sure it's safe.
That is correct. And that's the main goal of this implementation.
It's very cool. It's very nice to see an enterprise like Vanguard innovating like this and really unlocking the potential of the cloud for its users. Thanks for sharing this architecture.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for watching. This is My Architecture.